John, you spent many, many years out there, I understand. And also, there has been a catastrophic fire in that area. Have you
Yes.
kept up with the results of that fire? Did it damage any of the facilities out there?
It burned about 20 buildings, no loss of life, but the buildings that are burnt out on the trails, they have old historic type buildings that they might have built. And from what I understand, that's what it got. When you go up there on Philmont, you go on what's called a trek. And they have a 7-day trek or a 12-day trek. And then during that period of time, you'll hike, like on the 12-day trek, you'll hike anywhere from 50 to 100 miles. You go up there, and the first day you get checked in. They verify everybody, what they're doing. They got their physical. And there's a certain amount of equipment that they give to you, or not give to you, loan to you, while you're doing this. You get that equipment, you get on, and the next day you leave, and then you go with what's called a staff ranger. And they'll spend 2 days with you, showing you how they want things done the Philmont way, safety, fire, stuff like that. Well, a lot of those camps are what's called an unmanned camp. You might go there and they might have a building stay close to the bathroom, or what we call them kibos is what they're called, the outdoor bathrooms. They might have something like that. From what I understand, those are the things that got burned. There was no loss of life, no facilities. In some of the camps, every other day you're going to what's called a staff camp, and they'll have a program, like they might have pioneering, or they might have rock climbing, or they might have rappelling, or they might have branding, or they might have cooking, or old West songs. But there's every other day you're into a staff camp. None of those camps were hurt. And they'll have, just like it says, a staff. And they're putting on a program, so they'll be in period dress based upon what their camp is. And it's a lot of fun. It's a great experience. But when you're up there, as you come into these unstaffed camps, you might meet some other treks too from different countries. And like the first time I went when I was in high school, we came across a truck that was from Japan. They started where we ended up, and so we crossed in the middle. The funny thing about it is when we met them, we were all kind of dirty and grungy. They show up in their starched uniform. They looked like they just walked out of a store. And they all stopped and they bowed to you, and we're all like, what? We were a bunch of kids from Roswell, New Mexico. We had never met a bunch of Japanese people, period, much less somebody as formal as they were. So you run into all different kind of cultures. Well, when you run into a non-staff camp, you have more time to intermingle with those. You have a chance to go visit with them, find out more about their country, their experiences, their types of scouting programs. It's really a great opportunity just to meet people and to grow. But that's basically the ones that got destroyed. There was a lot of the forest area. It started in a place called Ute Park. If you leave Philmont and you go over the mountain to like over towards Taos or any of those
Angel
places,
Fire.
You have to go through Ute Park, and it's a small residential area. A lot of summer places, things like that. That's where it started, and it went from there to kind of on a northeastern direction across part of Philmont. So a lot of that wood area was destroyed. The hard part about that is it's got a lot of wildlife up there. It's got everything from mountain lions to bears to antelope to all type of rodents, stuff like that. A lot of eagles up there. So a lot of those animals lost their home. So they have to migrate somewhere else.
Right.
And it's really a neat experience. One time when we were up there, we had hiked the first day out, and some of my scouts came to me. They called me Uncle John. They said, Uncle John, come on. We got to show you something. I'm tired. And so, but I followed them. We went to this point where it was an overlook, and we were looking, and across the valley there was an eagle's nest. And we got to watch 2 eagles fly back and forth, and they were feeding their babies. That was the neatest experience. Well, about that time, we heard a noise, we looked up, and there's jets going across. So here you are, you hiked all the way, there's nobody there but just you. You're watching eagles over there and feeding their babies, and then you're watching jets above. That's really, it kind of works on your mind. You realize the difference. In a way, you're back in time,
Right.
in the pioneer days, but then at the same time, there's people up there flying around, they're looking down at the same kind of country that you're looking up. It's just a real neat experience all the way around. I've been there 4 times during my lifetime, and I love it. I would go back. It's my favorite place in the whole world. We refer to it as God's country. It's just a great experience. And that first time I went, you have that first evening there, we went to, they have an opening campfire where they have a ceremony and they tell you about Philmont, and they tell you about how the land was developed and everything. It came out of a Spanish land grant, and the history of it that we had heard. Now, whether it's true or not, sometimes these stories are a little bit fabricated. The experience that we heard is there was these Spanish representatives that came in with some townspeople, and they were establishing what's called the Maxwell Bobion land grant. And as they were out at this one spot, a bunch of townspeople came out and warned them, said, there's hickory of Apaches up there. And they told them the Indians heard that you'd given the land away, they're coming out here. So the Spanish land people said, see this spot, that mountain, that's it. And they left. So they gave a bigger land grant than they intended to, just because they wanted to get out there. They did not want to have to meet these Indians that they thought were hostile. Whether they were or not, or whether it's true or not, don't make any difference. But it resulted in a tremendous land grant. Anyway, as a result of that, this whole area, part of it, a gentleman named Wade Phillips, who was tied into the Phillips Petroleum, came in there and bought some of the land, and he wanted to establish a camp area. And he had kids, and he had it for a couple of years, and they would develop some of the trails for everything, for people to come in there. There's some pictures I had here of what he built, was called Villa de Philmonte. It's a Spanish type house. And it's full of antiques and equity. But what he was doing is he was using it to bring people in there, and then they would take them up in the mountains. They would go hunting.
Now, was this a scouting type camp at that time?
No, it wasn't. It was his. He just owned it.
Private.
But after seeing how much his kids liked it, he thought he ought to do something else with it. So he gave part of it away to the Boy Scouts so that they could start building and coming in there. Over a period of time, he got more interested in what the Scouts were doing and their program, so he gave them a bigger portion of it, gave them this Villa de Philmonte. And one of the places that's so neat to go to is called the Hunting Lodge. And it's a big lodge building all where they would take people up there, and from there they would go out on hunts. Well, what's his name? Oklahoman, the so famous storyteller.
Will Rogers?
He was up there the weekend before he died in a plane crash.
Wow.
Up at Philmont, at the hunting lodge, going hunting. I mean, he brought a lot of people in there. But he finally decided he wanted to give more of this land to the Scouts, but the Scouts couldn't afford it. So he made a deal with them. He had what's called the Phil Tower in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He gave them the Phil Tower for $1 a year. And then everything that was in there, all the rent went to the Boy Scouts. That way they could pay for it and maintain Philmont.
I see.
Tremendous generosity, tremendous generosity.
Phil Tower was some sort of a office tower, or
a multi tower in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
But part of it had to do with Phillips oil.
Right.
It wasn't Phillips oil particularly, but it was his portion of Phillips oil. He was just a very, very generous man. I've been going there so long, there's things about the villa that I know that the people now, that they've lost it. There was a wooden chest that he had bought from Spain. Beautiful, beautiful carved wooden chest. It was like at the time he got it, it was $40,000. He used it to store wood. And, you know, it's generating people that has so much money, they find something and they use it. It may not be what it was designed for,
Yeah.
but all the rest of us are just blown away by the fact that they're using it for wood.
Right.
You had a lot of fireplaces in this building.
Well, you bring up Will Rogers. That goes back somewhat in time. About what time period was this all happening? You did mention that it was about a week before Will Rogers died in a plane crash. I don't remember that date right off my head.
I don't remember either, but
Okay.
the Philmont, I think it was in the 1930s, 1920s that he gave it all to Philmont, all of
Okay.
Philmont to the Boy Scouts. And
All right.
they just continued to build it ever since then. They have, the biggest thing is a summer program, but they also have winter programs. And they have, like the week long, they started these 7-day checks after I had been there the first time. And they have a lot of church groups that go up there.
I see.
And
So it's not restricted just to scout groups.
I'm sorry?
Then the facility is not restricted to just scout groups. Okay.
No, they opened it up to a lot of people.
Okay.
And it's just, well, what I was going to say is the night that we got there, the first night after the opening campfire, we went to where a bunch of scouts were, and they were playing soccer. Now, in 1959, soccer was not a real big thing in the United States, so we didn't really know what they were doing and how to play it. But they invited us, so part of our guys were on one team, part on another. So we're out there running around thinking we know what we're doing, and we know we don't. But they're the nicest kids because they had different countries involved in it, and everybody's teaching everybody else. So it wasn't a soccer game competitive; it was a soccer game of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole thing is based upon working together and doing things together and learning.
Mm-hmm.
That's so much of what scouting is. I've been scouting for over 60 years. I started when I was 8 years old in the Cub Scouts in Rapid City, South Dakota.